Exodus chapter 5, verse 22. And a couple of weeks ago, I started just a little series running in the run-up to Easter called Trapped. Trapped. Now, I know you're thinking, what on earth is he getting on about? Well, listen, in the run-up to Easter, the opposition that Jesus faced was to try and trap him. Try and trap him so that he wouldn't get to the cross, so that he wouldn't be able to fulfill everything that God had in store for him. And if the enemy wants to trap Jesus, I can be sure that our enemy will also want to try and trap us. Will also want to try and trap us. And 2 weeks ago we looked at how we can be trapped by fear. And fear can completely paralyze us, completely nullify our walk with God when we don't live by faith but we live by fear. But today I want to move on and I want to look at something else that I think can trap us as Christians. And it's this. It's trapped by why. Trapped by a why. Now, I don't know about you, but when we had children, we've still got children, by the way, but when they were younger, when they were younger, especially Dylan, I don't know what it was, he kept asking why. We'd be driving somewhere, I remember we were on one journey, he said, why are those mountains there? Ask your mother, I don't know. Why can't I have that game? Ask your mother, she said you can't. Why are babies here? I said, definitely ask your mama, don't come to me. Ask your mum. Why? But do you know what, as Christians, I think we ask the same whys. I think we ask the question, why did this happen to us? Why didn't God answer that prayer? Why haven't I met the right person yet? Why are my children like this? Why won't my spouse help me with the cleaning? I'm not looking at Jenna. Why won't they do the cooking? Why? And I want to say, if you've got a why this morning, you're not alone. You are not alone in your whys today. Let me go through a few whys in the Bible. And see if you know who said these whys, right? This is the first one. Why do you forget? This is someone talking to God, right? Someone who wrote a book of the Bible said this about God. Why do you always forget us? Why do you forsake us for so long? Any ideas?
Egypt.
Pardon?
Egypt.
No? Jeremiah said that. Jeremiah said that in the book of Lamentations. Jeremiah was a major prophet in the Old Testament, and yet he said that. And let me give you another one. Why, Lord, do you stand far off? Why do you hide yourselves in times of trouble? Anyone ever said that to God? God, I'm in trouble. Why aren't you doing anything about it? Why? Any suggestions? Who said that? I'll tell you. David said this. Why do you stand so far off? Why? One of the greatest men in Israel, greatest kings of Israel, man after God's own heart, fell a giant when he was just a boy, but he still had a why. Let me put another one. Why do you hide your face and consider me your enemy, God? Any ideas? Job said that. Job, who was described as a blameless man, upright, a guy who shunned evil, a guy who feared God. And I sometimes think that God, surely if these people were asking such hard questions, surely you might have wanted to dumb down the Bible a bit and maybe not include some of these sort of searching questions in there. But he left their whys in there. He left their whys in there, but in the book for you and for me to see. In certain areas of life, asking why is a good question. You go into the research and development industry and people are looking at why does this happen? If you go into a scientific industry or scientific engineering career, I need to keep asking the question why. Because they want to get to answers, they want to solve problems, they want to find solutions, and why is important. Let me give you this why. About 3 p.m, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani, which means, my God, why have you forsaken me? I think sometimes when we get a why in our hearts, when we get a why, and God, why have you allowed this to happen? Why hasn't this happened? Why hasn't it turned out like this? I think God says, yes. Yes. Because when you can't figure it out, you've got to turn to God. I think when you've got a why in your heart, and you can't find the answer yourself, I think God in heaven goes, now they want to come to me. Now they're really searching. Now they're desperate. Now they're at their last resort. And they've got their ears open and they're ready to hear from me. I think God loves the people who, despite their whys, still have faith. Despite their whys, will still believe. Despite their whys, will continue going on with him. What does Hebrews 11:6 say? And without faith, it is impossible to please God. Because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who earnestly seek him. We need to earnestly seek God for some answers to our whys. We need to have our ears open and say, God, I don't understand this, but I think you still want to speak to me. And do you know what? The people in the Bible who asked whys, it wasn't a sign of them coming to the end of their road, but for some of them, their greatest days were still ahead of them. For some of them, they were just about to step into something great. And because they were asking why, because their eyes and their ears and their hearts were open towards God, God was able to do something incredible in them. But I want to say this morning, don't get trapped in your why. Keep moving forward. Keep moving forward. Keep moving forward. I want to take you on a journey this morning. I want to take you on a little journey that goes something like this. You see, I want us to go sailing or yachting or maybe stand-up paddle boarding, whatever is your cup of tea, because we're going to go sailing down the River Wye. We're going to go sailing down the River Wye. Anyone recognize that? It's the River Wye, and we're going to go down there this morning. So where are we? I told you to turn to Exodus chapter 5, verse 22. Let me give you some context before I read this why that we get onto. It's the why of Moses, okay, that we're going to come to. The why of Moses. But what had happened before this in Moses' life, he had encountered God miraculously on the burning bush. The bush was burning. He was out tending his flock, tending to the sheep on the hills in the desert, and this bush was burning, but it wasn't being consumed. And he goes up to have a look at this bush to see what's going on. And God speaks to him through the bush, and God says, Moses, take off your sandals, because where you are standing is holy ground. And God says to Moses, I want you to go to my people because they're crying out in slavery, and I'm sending you, Moses, to deliver them. The next thing God does to Moses, he gives Moses the most incredible party tricks that you could ever imagine. The most incredible party tricks that you could ever imagine. Because he says, Moses, I know you're not that good. I know you can't do everything in your own strength. And I know you can't speak very well. But he says, I'm going to give you some signs that you can use to go to Pharaoh. And he says, Moses, throw your staff down on the floor. Moses throws his staff down on the floor, and it turns into a snake. Pick it back up, and it turns into a stick. God says to Moses, Moses, put your hand inside your cloak and bring it back out, and his hand is turned leprous. It's got leprosy all over his arm. God says, put it back in your arm. He takes it back out again, and the next moment it's healed. God says, not just that, when you go to the River Nile and take out some of the water and pour it on the ground, it'll turn to blood. And he gave Moses these 3 miraculous signs to take to Pharaoh as a sign to him to say, let my people go. I'm calling them out of slavery. Can you imagine having those party tricks? I've got to say, about the best thing that I can do to impress anyone would be to throw a Malteser in the air and catch it in my mouth. That is about as far as my party tricks skills go. My cousin Ben, right? He's trained to be a Baptist minister. We'll forgive him for that, so he won't mind me. But he's trained to be a Baptist minister, and he could do this incredible party trick when we were in school. We were in school, grew up together, had a great time. I looked after him most of the time. And he could do this thing with his tongue. He could touch his nose. He could touch his nose, and whenever, he wanted to impress a girl, he'd say, "Look what I can do." He did, massive tongue. So that's Ben, don't tell him I said that, will you? He'll come speak you one day, and he'll get his own back on me. But I couldn't do anything like that. But I could just do the Malteser trick or grape straight into your mouth. But God gave Moses these incredible signs. Moses, the next thing he does, he goes to the people of Israel who are in slavery, does exactly what God tells him to do. He goes to the elders, he goes to Pharaoh, he performs the signs and the miracles that God has given him. And Pharaoh turns around to Moses and Aaron and he says, "I'm not letting your people go. I'm actually going to make their life harder. Because of what you've done, I'm going to make their work and what they have to produce for Egypt harder. And they no longer now just have to produce bricks using the straw that we give them. They have to go and get their own straw to make the bricks." And what I'm saying is, instead, Moses did exactly what God said. He performed the miracles. He was obedient to God. He went before Pharaoh. He went before the elders. And things got worse. Rather than things getting better by doing what God said, they got worse. And the elders and the Israelites were worked up against Moses, thinking, "What is this about? You were meant to come and save us." And then we get to the why. And this is what Moses says, Exodus 5:22. Moses returned to the Lord and said, "Why, Lord, why have you brought this trouble on your people?" I think I've got it up there on the screen. "Why, Lord, have you brought trouble on this people? Is this why you sent me? Is this why you sent me? Ever since I went to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he has brought trouble on his people, and you have not rescued your people at all. Instead of things getting better, they got worse. Instead of God hearing their cry and delivering them from Egypt, things actually got worse, and they got treated even more harshly, and things got bad." What is it, folks, about life, about when we decide to follow God, and when we decide to step out in faith, things don't always get better. Things don't always get better straight away, and sometimes, quite often, and in fact in most of the Bible, quite often they'll get worse. You'll face more opposition. You'll face greater oppression. You'll face everything coming against you, and you're thinking, "Man, God, I thought I was being obedient. I thought living for God would mean that things would be good. I thought I'd be blessed. I thought I'd have a carefree life." But things actually got even harder. What do you do when obedience to God doesn't take you to the place of success and fulfillment and excitement, but instead takes you to the trap of worry? Now they've got more work to do. They're not given straw, but they have to produce the full quota of work with less resources. And I think it's interesting in this stage of Moses' life is that he's between miracles. He's seen these miracles where God could give leprosy in one moment and then take it away. He's seen the miracle of a staff turning into a snake. He's seen the miracle of the water turning to wine as they take it, turning to blood as he pours it out of the Nile. But he hasn't yet seen the delivery of the people. He's between miracles. He hasn't yet seen the Red Sea being parted. He hasn't yet seen the plagues come to fruition where Pharaoh eventually releases the people of God. He's between miracles. He's seen God in a great way over here, but nothing else has happened yet. He's seen God move in a mighty way in some situation in his life, but he's not seen the fulfillment of everything yet. And in the middle, in between the miracles of life, Moses comes up with this question. Why, Lord? Why? 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 I remember what Sarah Weaver said last week. You know, she had done everything that she was meant to do. She'd become a Christian. She'd given her life to God. She left her whole life behind her. She married a Christian. She got 2 sons, and then bam, her husband taken away from her in an instant. What were her words? God, are you kidding me? God, are you kidding me? That was her why. But Moses did something important with his why, because in the next verse we read that he says that God spoke to him. It says, the Lord said to Moses, now you will see what I will do to Pharaoh. Because of my mighty hand, he will let them go. Because of my mighty hand, he will drive them out of his country. When you go to the doctor and you tell them all your problems, when you go to the doctor and you tell them, you know, you've got a bad chest, you know, doctor, I've had a headache, or doctor, I've had this, or doctor, little Johnny has been coughing for a while, can you have some medicine? How many of you hang around for an answer? We go to the doctor expecting a response. We go maybe to our accountant expecting a response. We go to a dentist expecting a response to our problems. How many of us, when we go to our God with our problem, hang around long enough to hear the answer? Not just the answer that we want to hear, but long enough to hear from heaven and know which direction to take. Because I've found that God is a God who is wanting to speak. God is a God who is wanting to communicate to us through his word. But some of us are so impatient, all we do is just go to God with our why. Why did this happen? And then leave it there. Instead of seeking God for the answer that he's got for us. And God replied to Moses. He replied to Moses with what he said. He said, Moses, I'm going to do it my way. I'm going to defeat Pharaoh my way. And he said, I love those words. He said, because of my mighty hand, I will deliver the people. Because of my mighty hand, he will drive them out. And so much of what we want to do, folks, is about us. So much of life has been consumed around us, and we're the center of everything. And if we don't have it our way and on our time and in our plan, we can't take God's plan. I want to say we've got to be a people who will hear, who will take our complaint to God, but we will be a people who will seek him earnestly for answers to life, answers for the way ahead. Your job is to obey God in what he's told you to do, not to find the answer for the problem. Can I say that again? Your job is to be obedient to God, not to find the answer to every problem that exists. If we could find the answer to the problem, folks, we wouldn't need him, would we? If we could find the answer to every situation that we could face, hey, what's the point in having God? Go and do life yourself if you think you can do it on your own. But for every one of us here who need God, we want his answer to our situations, not our designed, perfectly orchestrated plan. And God gives Moses a brilliant answer. He says this in verse 2. God also said to Moses, I am the Lord. I appeared to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob as God Almighty. But by my name, the Lord, I did not make myself fully known to them. I also established my covenant with them to give them the land of Canaan, where they
where they resided as foreigners. Moreover, I have heard the groaning of the Israelites, whom the Egyptians are enslaving, and I have remembered my covenant. Therefore say to the Israelites, I am the Lord, and I will bring you out from under the yoke of the Egyptians. I will free you from being slaves to them, and I will redeem you with an outstretched arm. And with mighty acts of judgment I will take you as my own people, and I will be your God. Then you will know that I am the Lord your God, who brought you out from under the yoke of the Egyptians. And I will bring you to the land I swore with uplifted hand to give to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. I will give it to you as a possession. I am the Lord. When you go to God with your why, I want you to remember some things. First thing, this. God, he said to Moses, I have heard, in verse 5, I have heard the groaning of the Israelites. I want to say this to everyone this morning. God hears you. God hears you. The trap of the enemy is to think that God doesn't hear your cry and doesn't hear my cry. The idols that were in existence in the land of Egypt at that time, they couldn't hear anything. Can I tell you, the idols in our land at the moment, they can't hear you. When you're scrolling through your phone looking for an answer to a problem, they can't hear you. When you're reading through a newspaper thinking, how do I handle this? The idols of this land can't hear you. When you've got your TV on and you're thinking, how do I deal with this problem? Those things can't hear you. But God in heaven hears you. Sometimes your spouse won't hear you, but God will hear you. Not just that, remember this, when you've got a why, that God remembers. God remembers you. Verse 5, it says this, I have remembered my covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It's a covenant that has been right from the start of the Bible all the way through, from Abraham, through the prophets, through the life of Jesus, through the early church, and it's still a covenant that exists today for you and for me. Isaiah, in his book, said these words, can a mother forget her baby? Though she may forget, God says this morning, I will not forget you. Not just that, not just that God hears, that God remembers, God also frees. In verse 6 it says this, I will free you from being slaves to them. The good news of Easter, folks, is that God can break every chain over your life. That God can release you from whatever it is that is holding you back, and every spiritual force that wants to keep you down. You and I don't have to live trapped. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. We love to sing that song, don't we? No longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. God hears, God remembers, God frees. But in your whys, remember this. God still redeems. God redeems. It says that in verse 6. And I will redeem you. Every now and again, someone for Christmas will get me an Amazon voucher, usually because they don't know what to get me, and I'm quite happy because I can go and spend it on whatever I want. So just dropping that hint there, certainly. I know we're a few months off, but when you have a voucher, I love taking it. I love when it's online. You put the code in and you can redeem that voucher online. And when you put that code in, that code is proof that someone has already paid the price for that gift. They paid the price for that gift to you. And when you go there, you can exchange it for something, for whatever you want. There's a hymn that we love to sing. Redeemed, how I love to proclaim it. Redeemed by the blood of the Lamb. You and I, we've been bought with a price, folks. And the price was Jesus' life on the cross, who shed his blood for you and for me. I also want to say that as you go through your whys in life, remember that God is not done. Moses had seen the miraculous
hand being cured from leprosy. He'd seen the staff turn into a snake, but he hadn't yet seen the Red Sea being parted. He hadn't yet seen all the plagues. He hadn't yet seen so many different things. And if he stopped at his why, think of what he'd have missed out on. Think of all the blessing, all the answer to prayer, all the answer to those cries that lay ahead of him. God was not done with Moses. And can I say, God is not done with you either. God is not done with you. Don't stop where you are on your why, but keep going. But I'd love to say that the story that I'm going through this morning ends well. But if you keep reading down through chapter 6, we get to verse 9 and it says this: Moses reported this to the Israelites, but they did not listen to him because of their discouragements and harsh labor. Moses, with his why, went to God and he got an answer. He said, hold on in there because things are going to change. And when he took that message back to the people, because of everything that they were going through, work, illness, brutality from the Egyptians, persecution, they got discouraged and they didn't receive the message. They didn't listen to Moses. And I thought for so many of us here, that can be so true. With all the discouragement that life maybe throws against us, with all of the setbacks that we face from time to time, with all of the situations that we feel, aren't going anywhere at all, it's so easy to get discouraged, isn't it? But I want to say to you, and I'm bringing you a message, it's the same message that Moses gave to his people. Keep going. There are better days ahead of you. Don't stop on your why, but keep going to God for a response. If you are in the trap this morning of why, can I say, don't stay there. It's only bad if you stay there and don't listen to God. Don't use your why as an excuse to give up. Don't use your why as an excuse not to keep growing and to keep learning. And you know what? When you get to a why, folks, when you get to a why in your life, listen, a why can look small, can't it? You know what? A why can go that way, and it can go this way. But you know what? If you also just keep your why before God, in time, our whys can turn into worship. And if we can learn to worship in our whys, we can come through that. If we can learn not to get discouraged in our whys, God will come through. If we can learn to stay worshipful and with our hearts in a right posture and our hearts in a right attitude before God, wanting to serve Him with our days and everything that we've got, and learn to stay in worship, I believe that we will see our God come through for us like never before.